Hello everybody. I hope you guys have had an amazing week so far. It is Wednesday, so this is kind of a midweek thing that I'm doing, but I did want to sit in front of the camera again and do my 8th installment of Unhinged News Stories of the past. Even though we're only halfway through the week, it's been a weirdly productive week for me, and so maybe that's why I just decided to randomly film in the middle of it. I also got like a cat tree yesterday for my cat and assembled it in one day. I literally got it and assembled it, which is crazy. I even cooked this week. It's crazy. I think there's just I'm in a new era. Anyway, we are of course here to do the 8th installment of Unhinged News Stories of the past. Every single one of the stories that I'm going to be doing today appeared on the Daily Los Angeles Herald on the issue dated August 29th of 1879. And now some background on the Daily Los Angeles Herald. They are most famously known as the Los Angeles Herald, and it ran for over a century. However, it did run as the Daily Los Angeles Herald between 1876 and 1884. Now, this was a staunchly Democratic paper based obviously out of Los Angeles, California, and they appealed mainly to working class Americans. It is also worth noting that it started off as a more agricultural paper before turning into celebrity news and gossip, which I think is so important because that shows exactly how Los Angeles would develop in the 20th century after the 1920s and 30s, of course, when Hollywood was really taking off. It was just a very, very different place than it was in 1879. But again, all of the stories that I'm going to be reading today are all off of the August 29th, 1879 edition of the Daily Los Angeles Herald. So let's go ahead and get into today's stories. So this very first story that I'm going to do today was just one that I found really, really funny. And this is a fairly long one, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started. But this is titled Saluting the Bride, and this is out of Detroit, Michigan. So there was a marriage at the upper end of the Detroit, Lansing, and Northern Road the other day. A big chap, almost able to throw a carload of lumber off the track, fell in love with a widow who was cooking for the hands at the sawmill. And after a week's acquaintance, they were married. The boys around the mill lent William 3 calico shirts, a dress coat, a pair of white pants, and chipped in a purse of about $20, and the couple started for Detroit on a bridal tour within an hour after being married. This says, "Tolzer lady," explained William as the conductor came along to collect tickets. "Are my bride just spliced 56 minutes ago. Cost of tickets down the coast. She's the lily of the valley, Mary is, and I'm the right bower in the deck of, what, curds? Conductor, salute the bride." The conductor hesitated. The widow had freckles and wrinkles and a turn-up nose, and kissing the bride was no gratification. Conductor, salute the bride or look out for tornadoes," continued William as he rode up and shed his coat. The conductor saluted. It was the best thing he could do just then. And it continues, "I never did try to put on style before," muttered William, "but I'm bound to see this thing through. If I have to fight all Michigan. These here passengers has got to come chalk, they has." The car was full. William walked down the aisle, waved his hand to command attention, and said, "I've just been married. Over there sets the bride. Anybody who wants to salute the bride can now do so. Anybody who don't want to will have cause to believe a tree fell on him." One by one, the men walked up and kissed the widow until only one was left. He was asleep. William reached over and lifted him into a sitting position at one movement and commanded, "Are you going to dust over that and kiss the bride?" "Blast your bride and you too," growled the passenger. William drew him over the back of the seat, laid him down in the aisle, tied his legs in a knot, and was making a bundle of him just of a size to go through a window when the man caved and went over and saluted. "Now then," said William as he put on his coat, "this bride tower will be resumed." This is such a ridiculous story. It's one of those stories that just makes me laugh. I think they're really just implying that the bride was ugly or something. It seemed like when they mentioned that she was freckled and had wrinkles and something about her nose. But I just found this story really, really funny, and it's most definitely unhinged. Do I really believe that he tied these man's legs in a knot? No, I do not believe he did that. But again, it's just a funny story that I wanted to share. So in the words of William, or something he would probably say, have at it, right? This next story is genuinely so hilarious to me. It is probably one of the funniest stories that I've ever read on this series, and if you don't agree, I'm gonna do you like William did that man on that train. So let's go ahead and get into this one because I was just LOLing at the whole thing. So this one is titled Why She Wore a Shawl. So about a week ago, some ladies got up a party to go on a moonlight excursion up Passaic River. The night finally arrived in the moon-flooded field and river with a glow of pearly richness. When the party was ready to leave the house, which had been appointed as the rendezvous, it was noticed that one of the most charming young ladies of the coterie had a shawl on. "What's the matter, Lucy?" inquired one young lady. "Are you afraid of taking cold?" No, she replied. "Perhaps you are troubled with malaria?" suggested a young man who was struggling to direct all his vitality into a mustache. "Okay, that's a lot. I never have malaria," replied the pretty creature with a smile of gumdropativeness. Oh, I have to look that up. The thermometer is up at 86. You'll roast if you wear that shawl." "I'm willing to roast," she said, rather pettishly. "Don't you know why she wears the shawl?" laughed her little brother as he wiped some taffy off his mouth with his jacket sleeve. "You keep still, you John Henry," screamed the dear angel as she turned a trifle red. The boy then got out of reach and yelled, "I'll tell you why she wears that shawl. When she gets out in the river, Bob puts his arm under it and hugs her, and nobody can see through the game." Then there was a scene. John Henry was driven summarily to bed, and the party started for the scene of the festivity. This is such a little brother moment, like just for John Henry to stand up there and be like, "I know why my sister does that. It's so that her man can get his hands up under them." It's just so freaking hilarious. And then the random man being like, "Girl, do you have malaria?" But then again, it's like 1879, so like, they probably all had malaria at one point. I'm not sure how common malaria was then, but I don't know, this one is just so freaking hilarious to me. And it's just like one of those moments of like, just youth, like it's just a bunch of teenagers, but it's 1879. But these conversations, I mean, it's just one of those things where these conversations could happen literally right now. It's just such a teenage thing, and I'm assuming that they were teenagers. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm just guessing that they were. But again, I just found this story absolutely hilarious. Okay, so I just looked up the word gumdropativeness and got literally nothing. Like apparently that word isn't a thing anymore. But I don't know if it's one of those like 1800s things where it's spelled differently than it would be today. Maybe it's related to like gump, like having gump or something. I sound slow. Anyway, this word apparently doesn't exist anymore. So I just wasted my time looking it up. Anyway, she still had a smile of gumdropativeness, and I'm going to use that word and I'm going to justify it by this newspaper article. Thank you. We're gonna go on to our next story, and this is a bank robbery. Something about bank robberies is just so classic. Do we still have bank robberies like we used to? Because in every single, I swear there has not been a paper I've read so far that did not have a bank robbery. And I find that to be so freaking hilarious. Anyway, this is Columbus, Ohio, so this is August 28th. Bold bank robbery. A man entered S.S. Wrigley's bank and entered into conversation with the proprietor, who was the only person in the bank, concerning negotiating for some bonds. While the two were thus engaged, a pal of the strangers gained entrance to the bank by a rear window and carried off $5,000 in currency and $15,000 in registered bonds. The theft was not discovered until some time afterwards. So it's your classic case. He goes in there, talks to the guy, then his buddy comes over and steals $5,000 in currency. So I'm gonna go ahead and break that down for you because that's what I always do. $5,000 from 1879 in 2025 is $158,835.50 today. So that is a huge increase there. So he got away with a lot of money. But again, that's just another classic bank robber case. People love robbing banks. I wonder, I always say like, is that really a thing? No, I think we're too secure now. I know people still rob banks, but it can't be this common. I mean, we have to do better, guys, okay? There's no way we can still let this slide. This next one is titled The Yazoo Tragedy. And so this is like our true crime case of the paper. This is New York, August 28th, I believe. So the Times prints a 2-column statement by Frank Dixon, brother of the Yazoo victim, giving the origin and details of the difficulty which he offers to corroborate under oath. He said there was not the least doubt in his mind that his brother was murdered by order of the Democratic Committee, and he knows that the chairman planned the assassination. Barksdale proved a willing tool and was selected to commit the deed. Had he refused or failed, there were 40 or 50 others who would have done it. He says further that other plans of assassination had been made, but none had proved successful. So I actually would, again, it's just one of those, I guess, true crime things where I was like, let me go ahead and see what I can find outside of that, you know, that specific story. And I did find a New York article. So it is the New York Times, and it was a New York Times article from August 27th. So it's literally this like exact same week, and it's titled "The Yazoo City Murder: Dixon Killed by Order of the Democratic Committee. His brother's story of the events leading to the tragedy, a deliberate plan to get rid of a popular opponent, Barksdale's reward for committing the deed, more political murders expected." So these are just a series of political murders that were carried out by the Democratic Committee. And it's not something that I have like a lot of background on. I didn't do like extensive research into it, but this was just, it was essentially just targeted political assassinations that were going on. And this story for the Yazoo tragedy, it is very interesting that it does mention the Times, and I was able to actually find that Times article. But these were just like, again, a series of political murders, and I thought that was pretty interesting to share as well. This last story that I'm doing is titled "Less Cowardly Than D. Young." Or Do Young, I don't know. I think it's D Young. So this is New York, August 28th. The Sun says of a local affray, Edward Murphy did a cowardly thing when he drew a knife on his shipmate, William Madden, instead of fighting it out with his fists like an honest star. Okay, so, but the sailor Murphy's act, cowardly as it was, is less shameful than that of the San Francisco publisher who shot down an unarmed preacher without giving him any chance to defend himself. So there were like no names, and I was really trying, like, I need to look up that story. Like, what do you mean a San Francisco publisher who shot down an unarmed preacher? Like, that's what I mean by unhinged, and I want to read that story. Anyway, that's the last story that I have for the Daily Los Angeles Herald. But yeah, I feel like every single time I read these stories, you know how there's like a story inside of the story? This is what I'm getting. You read something and you're like, oh, gee, I wonder more about that. So I'm doing further research. But of course, because everything is like over 140 years ago and it's 2025 and there's paywalls, it makes it so hard. But I just wanted to share that as well. But this is most definitely, truly unhinged. So there it is. Those were several of the stories that appeared again on the August 29th, 1879 edition of the Daily Los Angeles Herald. Just some of the stories that I wanted to share with you guys, as I always do on this channel. What I'm gonna do, I'm thinking of doing this later. I do eventually want to incorporate like magazines and other forms of media here. It's all still going to be print media of the past, but I really, really love the whole letters thing. And there are a lot of really, really, really interesting letter sections that I scroll through on Google Books when I'm completely bored, because that's the stuff that I do. Lord knows why. Anyway, I really did want to share those with you guys. Again, we're halfway through the week, guys. We only have 2 days left. Really, really looking forward to this weekend. It has been, again, a very productive week for me. I also got a new phone, so that's a win. I think that's a plus. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, as always, and I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your week. Thanks so much for tuning in. Bye.